What are microcontrollers? Some, you must have heard this term. We all must have heard this term, but what exactly they are? If in simplest term I had to define, it's a broad term which is used to refer to what we generally call as computers. Almost everything that you call as computers, or which you think has a computer or thinking part inside it, controlling segments, they all are control. They all can be brought into one umbrella term called microcontrollers. Okay, and if technically speaking, they are integrated circuits. But of course, they have some specifications which promotes them as microcontrollers, and you can also understand them as tiny computers. Okay, so how can we say that they are almost what is the thing that makes them synonymous with computers? So there are some particular properties or specifications that are generally found in computers. Okay, let's see what are they. What are those? I think they have studied about them. They are like CPU or one processing part. Okay, generally what we refer to as a computer or a personal computer has a CPU or a processing part. So a microcontroller has a processing part inside it. It's some many times it's called a microprocessor or a processor simply. Then a computer should have memory, because then it will be able to store programs, also intermediate and permanent outputs which need to be further processed. So there has to be some memory. Okay, it need not be in terabytes or gigabytes only or gigabytes. It can also be in kilobytes, but there has to be some memory. Then there has to be a system clock. What is a system clock? Any computer needs to keep track of the speed of different processes or the timing of different processes. Okay, for example, you wanted to do something, so there is a clock, and then there might be, any computer might have some peripherals in some kind of input devices, output devices. If it's your laptop, then your input devices can be a mouse, keyboard, and if it is a simple microcontroller, your output devices can be an LED. You remember the old phones, if you remember the 1 kilogram phones. So they used to have an LED which just used to tell that, okay, a call is coming, you're having an incoming call. Okay, so depending upon what your computer microcontroller is doing, but it will have some kind of peripheral, something input, some input device will be connected, some output device can be connected. So these are the basic things which are found in a microcontroller, and as you can clearly see, this is also being found in your computer. So just that's what I'm telling you. Microcontrollers can vary in cost. It can cost you as from as less as 300 to as high as 1.5 lakhs. But the basic functionality which makes it a microcontroller, I hope it is clear with you by now. And the variation in these four components is what differentiates one microcontroller from the other. For example, there might be some microcontroller who has a lot of memory, but the processing power is less. Sometimes the processing power is high, but the memory is less. So depending upon our uses, our application, our requirement, and most importantly, our budget, we choose a microcontroller which is suitable for us. That is the whole purpose. Okay, budget is a very important factor here by choosing a microcontroller. If you have tried buying a laptop, then you must be doing it. Okay, yeah. So I'll show you. There are many places you must have observed a microcontroller. Yeah, anything from an ATM machine, even your the nowadays the automated car keys that you have. So it must be having a microcontroller inside it, right? So microcontroller is in not just in mobile phones and computers. It's in, as you can see, from digital thermometer to your digital card swapping machines to smart solar panels, which can there are some solar panels which have some circuitry which controls the charging rate of the battery to charge it in the optimal time. So these all have microcontroller mechanisms behind them. Wherever we want to limit human intervention and we want to bring a smart device, we simply use a microcontroller. Now let's read about the components of a microcontroller in a bit more detail. Microcontroller is also written in short like this. What exactly does a microcontroller do? See, microcontroller is a tiny version of the computer. For example, you have simplistic microcontrollers which can simply check the time and switch on a device or switch off a device. So depending upon our functionality, we have many ranges of these tiny computers. and you can choose them and you can use them to make, to satisfy your requirement. What is the purpose of your project? If your project is vast, so vast that it cannot be done with an Arduino, then you might use a Raspberry Pi. Okay, just understand it as as tiny computers. Okay, an Arduino, if you go and buy the cheap version, the duplicate one, you'll get in 350 rupees, 350 bucks, and it has such a huge functionality. You can even create anti-theft systems. You can motion sensing, simple motion sensing sensors you can attach to the Arduino, and you can create anti-theft, simple anti-theft systems, not so complicated, using an Arduino board. Now we'll read about some specific components of a microcontroller. Have a look at this picture. Many parts of this we have already discussed, okay, but still we'll discuss some more things. Oscillator, I'll tell you what oscillator is. A to AD converter, analog to digital converter, we'll discuss about this. Microprocessor is the processing part. RAM and program memory, we'll discuss all about this. Okay, oscillator is a oscillating circuit which oscillates with a certain hertz of frequency, and the digital signal produced by that oscillator is used by the timer clock to keep a track of time. For example, this maybe the Arduino that you have, the Arduino Uno is 16 megahertz. It has a 16 megahertz crystal oscillator. This means that the oscillator oscillates 16 mega times per second. Okay, so mega is right, like 10 to the power 6, 16 million times per second. Okay, and we'll discuss about all of these one by one. So first is the microprocessor, or the CPU, of course. I think we have discussed the basic idea of this in the first demo class. I think we had on the 16th of January or something. So as you already know, the CPU, or the microprocessor, it controls the data flow, it takes input, it processes the data, it executes the instructions and produces output as desired by the computer. Okay, now there are two main parts of the microprocessor: are the control unit, I mean the ALU, the arithmetic and logical unit. They perform arithmetical and logical operations, and the control unit, so it handles the execution of instructions, right? For understanding their interrelation, this is the machine, and this is also important for understanding the processing power. So I'll come to it later. Machine cycle is basically what is the cycle which happens whenever a simple instruction is executed. So, for example, the instruction is stored is a line from a program. That program is stored in the memory. So that instruction is accessed by the control unit. Then it executes it, and the arithmetical and logical parts are executed using the ALU. And then the data, if it needs to be stored, are stored back in the memory. So I think we already have an idea of this, but just remember that it's like a machine cycle, the cycle that it takes to execute a simple instruction. Now, how is this machine cycle related to the speed of the computer? That is something we need to understand. It's good if you have this idea, but let's understand this concept called the clock cycle. Now, what is a clock cycle? For example, you saw an oscillator in the components of the microcontroller. Okay, and I also told you that different controllers have different crystal oscillators. So let's take an example of Arduino Uno. Those who are hearing this term for the first time, just remember that this is a microcontroller. So its crystal oscillator has a clock frequency of 16 megahertz. Now, what does that mean? Hertz is a unit of frequency. You all know that. So 16 million times per second it produces a clock. It produces basically a pulsating wave. For example, 16 million times every second it is on and off. Okay, it's a digital pulse, of course, not like the one sine curve that we used to read in maths. It's a digital pulse. Now see this part, one entire pulse of it, I mean one entire wave of it, you can call it wave, is called one clock cycle. Okay, this is one clock cycle of the crystal oscillator. Now this one clock cycle is the amount of time which it takes to execute one machine cycle, basically one simple instruction. So if your microcontroller has a greater has a clock who has a greater frequency, this means that in every second you can compute or you can execute that many simple instructions. So the processing power of your microcontroller increases with the frequency of the oscillator or the frequency of the clock. But as the processing power increases, what also increases is the energy requirement. See, if something is expending more power, then it requires more energy. So its energy costs you more. So it's not a good advice to you directly choose the a microcontroller with the highest processing power. No, because then you have to supply its energy in the same proportion. You should choose a microcontroller which has a processing power which is required by your task. So basically, you will learn. When you see the Arduino microcontroller, you'll get an idea that you can connect many peripherals. It's just like your computer. You can connect mouse, keyboard, pen drive, everything. So similarly, you can connect many different peripherals to the same thing. It's not that for every peripheral you need a separate microcontroller. So I hope you understood. If there are more clock cycles, then your microcontroller has a better processing power. So that was about the microprocessor. Okay, then comes the RAM. I think we have already discussed about it. It's just a temporarily store. It just temporarily stores the data and which is used for quick access. Maybe in the processing you need to store a data for some time, so you need to access it quickly during the execution of the program. For that we use RAM, and RAM allows the microcontroller to work with more information at the same time. Okay, for example, this comes handy when your microcontroller has to do multitasking. You must have seen if you have an old computer, or if you have 2 GB RAM or 4 GB RAMs, and if you're using 2 3 browsers at the same time, so it starts hanging, or switching the tabs becomes difficult. But at the same time, if you upgrade your RAM to 12 GB, and then if you use 3 browsers at the same time, Mozilla Firefox, Chrome, and Opera Mini, and 20 browsers in each of them, that will be smoother. So the point is that multitasking becomes smoother because the processor can process more information parallelly. That's the whole idea. So I don't think there's anything much needed to be discussed in RAM. Temporarily stores data. Just remember that it is volatile memory. I hope you remember we discussed it. Okay. Then there is the flash memory, or also called the program memory. As the name only suggests, you must have seen it in the components of a microcontroller also. So it is non-volatile. The programs that you upload to your microcontroller, they are stored in the flash memory. Okay, so it saves those programs in the microcontroller, and so that data is the program is retained even if the microcontroller power supply goes off. Okay, for example, you have a program in which every hour you have to collect some data from a field. So once you collect the data at 1 p.m., after that you won't keep your microcontroller powered on for 1 hour because it will be consuming power. Of course, there are many different sleep modes for that. That is a different functionality altogether. What I'm saying is that even if you cut off the power supplies to some crucial components and you set an alarm that okay, at 2 p.m. my microcontroller should wake up and again collect the data. So after 1 hour when it wakes up, the program should be there in the microcontroller. No? If it gets evaporated, then how will you function? You will achieve your functionality. Therefore, your program should be stored in flash. They are generally stored in flash memory so that they don't get deleted unless you remove that program and upload another one. Then another thing that we had in that was serial bus interface. See, serial bus interface is an interface, or what is an interface? A junction for serial communication. Now, what is serial communication? Communication is basically of two types. Okay, one is parallel, in which there are multiple channels for data transmission, data communication. So all those channels, from all those channels, the data is sent or received parallelly. And another type of data communication is serial communication. So in serial communication, there is only a single channel, and data here is transferred bit by bit. So most of the microcontrollers, the simple microcontrollers that you see, they will always have a serial bus interface. So this interface allows the serial communication of data with any external device. Okay. Now, say, do you see this data is transferred bit by bit? That's why if you see the if you go and see the specification of any microcontroller, general microcontroller, like for example, if you see for an Arduino, so there are many different data communication speeds which are specified, which are called which is actually called baud rate. So baud rate is actually, it is in bits per second. So how many bits per second can be transferred to that serial communication channel? Okay, so the more the better. The transmission will be faster. The more data you can transfer per second. So we spent there are like 9600 baud. 9600 baud means 9600 bits per second. You can of course divide it and convert it into bytes. That's not an issue. What I'm telling you is the serial communication is done bit by bit. Okay, assume that there is a pipe and water is flowing through it. So one layer of water passes and then only the next layer will go. Similarly, this is one bit of information, the next, the next, the next. Bit by bit, the serially the data is communicated to the device. For example, the USB port that you have in your computer, universal serial bus. So it happens by serial communication. You'll understand this part better when we work a project on serial monitor. We'll do an Arduino project with data communication on the serial monitor. So you understand it much better. You have a much practical idea when we do that. Okay. Then what is the next part? Then the input output ports. On any microcontroller, input output ports. What do they mean? Just like Rohan had a doubt, no, that there is a microcontroller and we need to connect something. So there are points, open points on a microcontroller where you can connect something. You can connect an input device, you can connect an output device, depending upon the program, what you want to connect there. If you have configured that, okay, here I should connect an LED, it should be an output device, and I want it to be the output to be high at 6 p.m. You know that this is going to your street light. So if according to your program, the microcontroller will check the time from the system clock, and when it is 6 p.m., it will set this pin to this port to high, and which will switch on this street light. Okay, this is just to give you an idea. Instead of street light, you can just attach an LED and check the same thing. So there are many input and output devices which can be connected. For example, I'll give you some examples just to get an idea. For example, an input device, very simple input device is an LDR. It's a light dependent resistor. It is a resistor whose resistance changes with the amount of light which falls on it. Okay. For example, if you put it in bright light, so its resistance becomes very low, and if you put it in low light, then its resistance will become high. So that happens simply due to photoelectric effect, and but that can be used to make those smart what do you call it, street lights. For example, you want a street light, which automatically turns off at sunrise and automatically turns on at sunset. You don't want it to be happen at a fixed timing, because that timing of sunset changes with seasons. So that you can make using an LDR. Okay, depending upon the light intensity, you can program your microcontroller that when the light intensity is this much, your street light should turn on. When light intensity is this much, your street light should turn off. Okay, another input devices can be a temperature sensor. There are many types of temperature sensors, from the good to the bad to the ugly. I mean, from the cheap to the expensive ones, of course. Then there are motion sensors. These all can be connected to your microcontroller. There are input devices. There's distance sensor. They use some use infrared, some use ultrasonic radiations. Then there's button switch. Switch is also a kind of input device. There's toggle switch, and what can be some output devices? Output devices can be, of course, LEDs, light emitting diodes, buzzer alarm. It's a sound. Buzzer is a small device which produces a sound. So, for example, you have a heat sensor or you have a smoke sensor. So when you detect smoke in the room, and you want to set off a buzzer, so you need an output device for that. But it can only produce a buzzing sound. But if you want a variety of sound, then you have to, of course, attach a speaker. Then there are DC motors. There are also, if you're planning to make a moving robot, then you have to put DC motors at the wheels. So all these are output devices, and these a set of these can club to your microcontroller, and accordingly you can program a microcontroller that they take input from some input devices, they execute it, they check it, and they produce the output on some output devices. What I'm trying to transfer to you, the idea that I'm trying to transfer to you is that a microcontroller functions basically as a computer. You have to decide what you want to do, how many input devices you want, what data you want, what you want to do with that data, and what do you want to do as a result. Okay, this all depends upon you. Now let's start with a thing called Arduino. Now this term is heard a lot, Arduino. Before we go or jump on understanding this term, which is very general nowadays, if you have stepped into your college, so you'll be hearing it a lot of times in different competitions if you go. But many a times you'll see that people, many people call Arduino is a microcontroller. Even you might be thinking, maybe some of you, that we have started with microcontrollers, so maybe Arduino is a microcontroller, but this statement is technically incorrect. Arduino is not a microcontroller. Arduinos are basically circuit boards which have microcontroller chips on them. I mean, the microcontroller is embedded on it, but along with the microcontroller, they have many other stuffs also. Okay, so always remember that Arduino are circuit boards. Okay, you can also consider them as printed circuit boards, PCB, because they are digitally designed and printed. So printed circuit boards, they are attached on the printed circuit board, which has a microcontroller chip along with many other peripherals like voltage regulator, a crystal oscillator, memory unit, extra capacitors, some LEDs, some header pins. Okay, so why we have those things and what is the functionality, we'll read about them. Arduino is actually an Italian company, okay, that designs, and the name Arduino is basically of an Italian company that designs and sells these circuit boards, and these circuit boards which make the use of those microcontrollers which are embedded on the circuit boards, we can easily use them. So these circuit boards basically facilitate the programming and using of the microcontrollers which are embedded on those circuit boards, and Arduino is the name of a Italian company which manufactures them. But at the same time, this company is very generous. So what they have done is actually, in fact, not they have done, their designs, the hardware designs are open sourced. The designs are available. You can use them. If you have a manufacturing factory, you can use them to make your own circuit boards. You can change some variations. You can put some more two more pins, and you can do much more stuff with that. So basically, that is why if you try to see in the market, if you go and look in the market, you will find many Arduino boards starting from 300 going to 3000. So because the designs are open source, there are many Chinese companies and many other companies, third-party companies, which just copy those designs and print the same circuit boards and sell it in the markets. And they also have brought some variations to the circuit boards, so they are also available. The only limitation is that they cannot call their circuit boards Arduino because that is the trademark of the company. But they are identically the same. They do the same thing. So we just randomly call them Arduino. But technically, the Arduino is the name of the company. So only their circuit boards are called Arduino, and the others are just microcontrollers. I hope the word Arduino is very much clear in everyone's mind. Then you will also have a term. You will also hear a term called Arduino shields. Okay, so what are these Arduino shields? They are basically, they are add-on circuit boards. Okay, for example, you have an Arduino circuit board. If anybody has, I know many of you will have some unclarity about what are Arduinos. Don't worry, we'll clear all of that in today's class. We'll go through an Arduino and different parts of it step by step. Okay, Arduino Shield is basically, there are many companies who make add-on circuit boards that are simply, you can just plug it onto your Arduino. For example, there's this, you can just plug it over this, and they provide you the added functionality. For example, there's a company called Adafruit. So they make shields that let you very easily control the motors and servos that we were talking about. So if you are directly connecting the motors and servos, then you need to build some extra circuitry for stabilizing their input, and so that you don't blow them up, and stabilizing their acceleration and other things. But if you use that Adafruit motor shield, so that has all those circuits, you just need to directly plug in that motor shield, and then you plug in your motor here, and you can directly use it. So Arduino shields, that is why, see, this is why Arduinos are so famous, because they themselves have a whole range of functionality, and apart from that, you have Arduino shields, and there are other circuitries which you can connect, and you can further expand there functionality to suit your purpose. For your entire purpose, you can create one compact microcontroller which is customized to your purpose, and you can put it in a waterproof IP68 rating case, and then you can put it in your sugarcane field to measure the data. And even if it rains, you don't need to care, you don't need to worry. So what I'm telling you, that there is a lot of scope for personalization and customization. Now to make you people better acquainted with the idea of Arduino, we will swiftly run through its different parts and understand them. Okay, we'll see the microcontroller. Let me see the. So guys, you can have a look here. Such this is the size of the most popular Arduino. It's called Arduino Uno. Okay, it works on a microcontroller. You can see this black part here. This is the microcontroller. It's I think, if I'm not wrong, it's Atmega 328P chip. We'll read about it. We'll come to it, and maybe we'll read about it a little bit. It's manufactured by a company called Atmel. That is the chip, and it has we'll run through the different parts of the Arduino. But just have a look how small it is, and it is one of the cheapest computers that you can get. I mean, this is the original one. You can see made in Italy written there, made by the original company, but nobody buys that. At least you won't find people buying that around you. Of course, it has some features, the quality is of course better, but the cheap versions are available for 300 bucks, 350, 400 bucks. Then Arduino Mega also you can get at 550 bucks. So the thing is that they are very cheap, and they have a lot of functionality which you can use to create your own projects. One thing to remember is that every Arduino should have a bootloader. I mean, see, they are so simple that they are computers, but they don't need they don't even need an operating system. But one thing that needs to be present in every Arduino is a bootloader. So bootloader, what it does is basically it facilitates your communication with the device via the USB port. There is a USB port. We'll study about it soon. So through that USB port, you can upload programs, and you can send data, you can receive data. So that communication and the communication of the microcontroller with the Arduino IDE, which is the firmware software. So that communication is facilitated by the bootloader. So bootloader always comes pre-installed with the Arduino. Okay, this is one side view of the Arduino board, Arduino Uno. Okay, what you can see here are two things. One is this part. Yes, this is the USB port, and this is the one, barrel jack power connector. We'll discuss about it. See, this is the thing which gives a lot of versatility to the Arduino Uno. See, this is a port. This is a connector, USB connector, with which you can directly connect your Arduino Uno to your laptop, to your computer via the USB port. जिसमें आप pen drive connect करते हो, directly through that you can connect it to the Arduino, and this can be used for not just powering up your Arduino. You can power it up while you are using it. Maybe you are testing it, you're making a project and you just want to test it. So you don't need to supply any other power. It will draw power from your laptop, your computer, your PC. Okay, through this USB port. Apart from that, you can use it to upload programs. The programs are uploaded through the USB port, and also data transfer. For example, you are setting up your microcontroller in a sugarcane field, and you need, as I told you, you need to get the data every hour, and you need to display it on your computer's screen. So if you are present along with the Arduino and your computer is connected, so using the serial monitor, the data can be displayed directly on your screen. Or if you are giving some input from your keyboard, for example, Y, A, P, so that is also communicated through this USB port to the Arduino. Maybe if there's a program in which you need to enter some letters, maybe if you enter vowels, then the LED should light up, and if you don't enter vowels, then the LED should not light up. So you will enter through keyboard, but that data will be serially communicated through this USB connector to the microcontroller. So these are the three versatile functions that this USB connector does. Apart from this which you see is a barrel jack power connector. Barrel jack is the name of the jack. Depending upon the shape, you can see it looks like a barrel. So there's nothing high tech in that. And why it is used is, see, for example, you need a functionality where your device should be independent of your laptop. For example, you're making a robot The robot which should travel in an agricultural field and collect data at various points. Now you cannot move with the robot, no, with your laptop in your hands. So you can't power that. You can't keep your robot or your device connected via the USB connector. So once you have uploaded your program, you have connected all the peripherals, then you need to power. The only thing that you need to supply is power. So for that external power, this power connector is there. Through the power connector, you need connect a 9-volt battery or anything. Even up to a 12 volts power supply is also okay. And just through the power jack, you supply a power supply. You give a power supply to the Arduino board, and then the device becomes independent. You can maybe program it to store the data in the memory, and then you can retrieve it later. Many ways. You have a Wi-Fi module, store it, send it over the clouds, anything you do. So this is for that time when you can't, you want your device to be independent of your computer, personal computer. Now there is a short trick that I would like to share here, that instead, if you don't want to buy a battery, or if you have to submit, you are making a project in the night and you don't have a battery, or your battery has drained out, so you can just use your mobile phone's power bank and use a USB cable and just power it. You can directly power it through your power bank, and that will also be a very heavy power supply. Maybe your project requires much more than what a 9-volt battery can supply. Of course, 9-volt battery will last for some time, but if your project is very power drained, so you can use if you have 13,000 mAh power bank, so that is much more than you need. You can directly use your power bank to power the Arduino. This that you see here is the actual microcontroller, technically speaking. You can see here it's written, it's at Atmega 328P chip. Okay, and it is manufactured by a company called Atmel. It is a 16 megahertz chip. I think we have already discussed it. Basically, the oscillator that it uses is a 16 megahertz oscillator, and this is in the name of digital electronics. This is called an IC. It's basically an IC, integrated circuit. So this is the actual microcontroller. In fact, in reality, you don't need the complete Arduino board. You can just take this microcontroller, plug this out. It is detachable. You can just put a pen in, and carefully if you plug it out, it will come out of the Arduino board. And you can just take it out, and with some peripherals like a stable voltage supply, you have to just be a bit extra careful so that you don't blow it up. You can use it directly even without the Arduino board. So what I'm trying to tell you is that this is the main crux, and the other components are there to assist you in using it. You can just plug it in a breadboard, and with some other simple things you can just directly use it. You might need a few capacitors, a voltage regulator. You don't even need a voltage regulator if you have a very stable voltage supply. Anyways, this is the microcontroller. Well, guys, I just have to. When you look at the Arduino, you will have these two rows of pins at one side of the Arduino. Okay, so you can see these are called pin headers. Basically, why are they there? They help you in connecting any external thing. See, it's a female pin header. So you just plug in your external object in this. Okay, and this is internally connected. For example, I'm just telling you, for example, this is internally connected to this. For example, this is internally connected to this. So when you plug the microcontroller in its place, these points get internally soldered. In fact, they're already soldered on the PCB. And when you plug something here, so your item gets automatically connected to this pin of the microcontroller. So do you see how it easy it becomes to use the Arduino board because of these pin headers? Now there are two sets of pin headers here that you can see here. Yeah, this is a reset pin. We'll read about it. Just it's an added functionality. There's a reset button in the Arduino, and I'll explain to you about it. What it does is basically there's a red or a black colored button you'll find on the Arduino, and for example, when you sometimes your program it gets stuck or there's some issue, so it's like a restarting of your computer. So it just resets, it restarts the execution of the program from the first line, a fresh start of the program. So there is a hardware button for it, but in case your button is not working or you need an extra, you need a separate button for it somehow. So there's a key which you can use. There's a pin header which you can use as a reset pin. Apart from this, if you see, these are the power pins. It's written also here, power. So why are they there? They are 3.3 volt, 5 volt, and then ground. See, they are there. If you want, you can connect wires here to power up any external circuit or device, which can work on 5 volt. Most of the devices that you have with Arduino, they mostly work on 5 volt or 3.3 volt. For example, if you have a device which needs 5 volt, maybe a servo motor or a potentiometer, so you can give it. If your Arduino has power, so this pin is having 5 volt output, so you can just plug it this device here and it will get powered up. Okay, or if you have a device which needs 3.3 volts, you can just attach it here, and the other end of the device will of course go to ground, and the same ground can also go to this device. So what I'm telling you, that this is the power outlets, like the sockets. You have sockets in your room, na, where you can attach anything. So these are like those sockets. And if you have a device which needs to attach to them, of course anything to connect, it will at least need a ground. So that is why you see there are two grounds here, and there's one more ground pin another side. So you can use it to connect to devices. VIN. See, VIN is used for sometimes if you want to externally power your Arduino board. For example, without using the power jack, power connector, if you want to externally power through a through a jumper wire, so then you can use this VIN. This is voltage input. So from here also you can power up your Arduino. Okay. Then if you look here, these are 6 analog pins. Now we have to understand this really well. Analog input pins basically. Now what is their use? See, analog, if anyone has doubt in analog and digital and how we convert them, I'll discuss that now. But first understand this, that these pins, these pin headers are used to measure analog inputs, like continuous voltages. What are analog inputs, for example? Let's discuss a bit about digital and analog here before we move on to the pins. See, what is digital input or digital output? If you remember, digital signal is like this. I mean, it is either high or low. It knows only two things. Either it will be high or low. So if you are using a digital output pin, if you are using a pin which is producing digital output, so it will either produce a high or a low. It won't produce anything in between. Okay. For example, if we are using a digital pin as an input pin, so it will try to read the input, and it will either read it as a high or a low. It won't say that it is somewhere between 0 volt to 5 volt. It will either say that it is high. The threshold, if I remember, is like 1.3 volt. If I remember it correctly, around 1.3 volt. So if the input is over 1.3 volt, it will say that it is high. The digital input will be read as 1. And if it is below 1.3 volt, the digital input will be read as 0. That's it. You won't get an idea whether it is 2.3. If it is high, it can be 2.3, it can be 3.3, anything. You won't get an idea. So this is the job of digital input pins or output pins. Then we have analog signals. So analog pins can give you a range between say 0 volt to 5 volt. Say there is a device in which you need a range. For example, a very good example is potentiometer. If you are using a potentiometer, it gives you a range between zero, that the voltages which are connected between its terminals. Okay, if any of you don't know about potentiometer, it's just a device whose resistance can be varied by rotating a knob, and it divides the voltage between the two terminals. It's just like this, and you can move this slider this way or this way, and it gives a potential between these 2 points. Okay, or anything. What else can potentiometer, or any data that you need to take in for any purpose. Potentiometer gives analog input. There are some temperature sensors that also give analog input. So humidity sensors, very good example. So that those there sometimes you need an analog input to be read. There is a pin where some voltage is coming, and you need to read that voltage exactly. So therefore we have analog input pins A0 to A5. There are 6 analog input pins. I hope you saw in this picture. This is their job, to take analog inputs, and among these A4 and A5 can also have an added functionality. They can help in the transmission and receiving of data. Now, the problem here is the microprocessor doesn't actually, in fact, you know that the computers are binary devices, so they don't actually understand analog values. Therefore, when you have to take analog inputs, we have a special thing in the microcontroller called AD converters. If you remember, you must have seen it in this picture. Yeah, AD converter, right? So AD converter is basically analog to digital converter. I'll tell you how it does the conversion. We'll come to it. Let's first learn about the digital pins and then we'll come to understand analog to digital conversion. Okay guys, remember that we have to study about this AD conversion. Yeah, so these are the digital pins. You can see from 0 to 13 there are 14 digital pins on the Arduino. Okay, there is an A ref. For understanding this, we need to understand AD conversion. So we'll come to this after AD conversion. You can see there's a ground pin here also, because when you start connecting peripherals, you need a lot of ground pins. If three are less, then you use a breadboard and you take it out from the breadboard from this ground pin and you connect many pins here. So that is of course available. Now digital pins, these are input output pins. See, the makers of the Arduino had to make a compact board. So they chose that digital pins are used very often. That is why there are so many numbers, 14. And they did not want to have separate pins for inputs and separate pins for output, because that would not just increase the size of the board but also the energy requirement. So they are programmable input output pins, means you can program them to serve as input and you can program them to serve as output pins depending upon your use. For example, in some program you want to connect an LED to pin 8. So if you connect an LED, basically what is happening is pin 8 has to serve as output and you want to take input in pin 4. So in your program you will set up pin 4 as an input and pin 8 as an output device. Output pin. So in that program, the Arduino will be expecting producing an output on pin 8 and expecting an input on pin 4. So the point is they can either take digital input or produce digital output depending upon how they are programmed. And I've already told you digital input and output can either be high or low. I mean, if you have connected an LED here, then either you can switch it on or you can switch it off. But you cannot control its brightness, because for controlling its brightness you have to change the amount of current that is going into it, and that is not a digital function, that is an analog function. Okay, so you cannot control the brightness through the program. You can have hardware circuits which control the brightness, that is external matter, but as far as program is concerned, it can only digitally switch it on or switch it off. Also you can see pin 0 and 1 have TX and RX written here. We'll read about TX and RX, but just know that they are used for transmission and receiving of data. So via USB, so they can also be at 0 and 1 pin are also used as transmission and can be also be used for transmission and receiving, of course, if the need is there. Now I think yes, now we can discuss a little bit about AD conversion and then we can read about error. Now see, when we read the voltage from an analog pin of an Arduino, basically, and display it, for example, let's go to the analog pins. For example, if you connect a potentiometer here and you are reading it from A1, because we are connecting it here, sorry. And when you try to display it on a serial monitor, you try to print it. So the value you get is something like, if you make the potentiometer go at 0, so you get 0. If you make the potentiometer at the highest, it will get 1023, and in between you will get any value from 0 to 1023. So now what happens is a computer doesn't understand analog values directly. I think I told you directly. Sorry, I think I told you this earlier. So what analog to digital converter does is it stores the analog values as 10-bit numbers. Now it should be clear to you that if you have a 10-bit number, then what is the maximum, what is the range of the numbers that you can store in this? Decimal numbers 0 to 1023, right? Because total 1024 numbers can be stored in 10 bits. So what happens is 10-bit numbers. They store the AD converters, they store the analog voltages as 10-bit numbers. Now, for example, let us understand this with a picture. For example, you have a potentiometer connected at A1, okay? So that potentiometer, the potentiometer basically has three terminals. This is the central terminal which gives the analog output, so it is connected to A1. This is connected to 5 volt and this is connected to ground. So now as you turn the potentiometer, the value of the voltage produced at A1 will change. It can be 5 volt, it can be 0 volt, and it can be anything in between. What the analog to digital converter does is, the highest value that it can store, digital value 1023 in decimal, refers to 5 volt. The lowest that it can store, 0, refers to 0 volt, and all the numbers in between these 1024 numbers are linearly calibrated from 0 to 5 volt. Is it clear to everyone? So if you are if your output is 2.5 volt, then it will display 512. Actually, it will store 512 in decimals. Now, in your program, you want to display 2.5 volt because you want to display the voltage that you're getting, right? So we can, we can switch the program a little bit just to do this job. So if you can see 1023 readings correspond to 5 volt. So each voltage refers to 1023 divided by 5, which is around 204.6. So the reading that you get, the reading that you get is actually 204.6 times the actual analog voltage. So if you want to get the voltage, if you just divide the reading by 204.6, you don't need to remember this. You can directly do it by division also, any way you like it. If you have understood it, you can do it. You just divide it and you compensate that factor with the reading that you get. If you're so that, for example, if you're getting 700 here, so this 700 to get converted into voltage, if you just divide it by 204.6, so you will get the voltage, the actual voltage that is there as an analog input. This is called ARF, analog reference. The way we were talking, ARF. I'll talk more about it, but just remember that this is the analog reference. So the highest reference value refers to 1023. The lowest is of course 0, which refers to 0, and all the values in between are scaled to between these 1024 numbers. Okay. So for example, if you are giving 2.5 volt to the analog pin, if you directly display it, it will display 512. But we don't want to display 512 because a normal layman will not understand what 512 means. So we need to convert this 512 into the voltage, right? So whatever value we are getting divided by 1023 into 5. If you do this, you will get the actual voltage. If V is equal to 512, you just put 512 here, so you will get 2.5 volts. So we do this conversion in our program. We write it, we include it in our code, and instead of printing V, we finally print the answer of this part. So the user will feel, you will feel that this is how the AD converter facilitates us to read analog values. Guys, if you remember, there is an ARF pin here. Okay. Now this is the job of the ARF pin. For example, you are making a device, you are making a project in which you need very sensitive analog measurements in 0 to 1 volt. Even if there's a difference of 0.15 volt, you should be able to measure it. But your device is only getting input between 0 to 1 volt. So what do, you connect a stable 1 volt supply here. So what happens is, this instead of 5 volt, this becomes 1 volt. So now your 1 volt will refer to 1023. So do you see your accuracy, your sensitivity of your device is increased? But it won't, for any value greater than 1 volt, it will give 1023 only. But for these 1 volts, you have 1024 divisions. You can divide and see how sensitive it is. So compared to 5 volt ARF, if you give 1 volt ARF, then your measurements become more sensitive. Okay. So that is the purpose of ARF. and mostly we don't need it. You won't need it as long as you are doing any normal projects. Mostly the 5 volt ARF works very well because most of your devices will work within the range of 5 volts only. You can easily measure them, and the accuracy, it's not so much different. I mean, you're not going to measure weigh gold machines. You're not going to weigh gold mines, so it doesn't matter much. Okay, yeah, you can see there are 6 pins which have these things. These are PWM enabled pins. What are PWM? PWM stands for pulse width modulation. This is especially going to be a topic for, just like you understood analog input. Now there might be some times when you need to produce an analog output. Now as you know that the computer does not know anything analog. It can only produce a digital output, 1 or 0. So pulse width modulation, and I personally find them very cool. Somebody thought that using digital outputs, by changing the width of the pulse, we can actually produce analog outputs. We'll understand them how, and we'll also understand why we need them. What are the applications? For example, a pulse width modulated signal is. Basically, we are trying using PWM. We convert digital signals to analog. So, for example, this is a proper digital signal. Okay, 5 volt, constant 5 volt you are getting. Now, I'm able to see the computer has an oscillator circuit, right? So it can time its output and input in that range, which is around 16 megahertz, right? So it's true that it can only produce out high and low, but how often depends upon its clock frequency. Now see, I'm making a signal. Now this signal is high for 0.1 microseconds and low for 0.4 microseconds. Then again high for 0.1 microseconds. Again low for 0. I mean this is the pulse. This is the pulse. Pulse का मतलब यही होता है, high low. This is the pulse. So pulse. And what is the width? We have modulated the width. We have changed the width. Now, if you remember a little bit from physics, if I calculate the average power delivered by this pulse, okay, and then I multiply it with the total time. I mean, if I take this as one pulse, okay, if I calculate the average power and I multiply with the time, you actually get the average voltage. This modulated pulse will become equivalent to a constant pulse of that average voltage. Okay. For example, here the average voltage will be the duty cycle is 1/5, so it will be 1 volt. So you can replace this pulse, modulated pulse is equivalent to a constant voltage of 1 volt, because in any given time this constant voltage of 1 volt will supply the same power which this modulated pulse will. Are you getting the idea? So what we have done is, effectively we have produced a digital signal. I mean, we have produced a signal of 1 volt output, while the computer actually is not capable of doing it. It can only produce 5 or 0. But using different pulse width of 5 and 0, we can produce anything between 5 and 0. And this ratio of the on time to the off time, this is called duty cycle. Time on by time off. So for example, here if you see, it's 0.1 by 0.4. So it's basically 0.25 or 25. Sometimes it's also written as percentage. So the duty cycle of this PWM is 25%. I hope this is clear. This is the way we produce analog outputs. We can produce anything from 0 to 5 volts from the PWM digital pins. There are 6 PWM enabled digital pins. From there you can do this. And where we use them is, remember that example when I told you that you can, using the digital pins, you can switch on an LED, you can switch it off, but you cannot control its intensity. You cannot make it dim. So that dimming effect of the LED, those of you who would be going to candlelight dinners today or tomorrow, so they would be knowing it better. So the dimming light effect of the lightings can be done by using PWM signals. because here you need not give complete 5 volts. You can give 1 volt, then you can slowly give 2 volt, then 3 volt, then again back to 1 volt or 0. So dimming effect, and there can be other anywhere where you need a variation of the output. You can do that using a PWM signal, and you can produce a PWM signal just if you know how much voltage you want, and depending upon how much resultant voltage you want, depending upon that you can calculate the duty cycle and you can include it in your program. I hope this is clear to everyone. See, apart from these general terms, there are a few LEDs on the inbuilt LEDs soldered on the Arduino board. Okay, so what are the job of the? There are actually 4 LEDs. What the job of those LEDs is, they basically work as indicators. Okay, and there is also one customizable LED. And if you are making a device which has to have a very good power efficiency, then you can also remove those LEDs. They are soldered, so you can solder them out so that they don't consume power of your battery, and your battery lasts longer, because LEDs actually consume a good amount of power. But anyways, so there are 4 LEDs in this picture. You can see 3 LEDs here: L, TX and RX, and there is one another LED on the corner which is called the power LED. So these 4 LEDs are, first is the power LED. This just shows is an indicator of power supply. If as soon as you plug your Arduino to your laptop or any battery, so the power LED will start glowing, so which means that okay, the Arduino is getting powered. Then you have the TX LED and the RX LED. So they are transmission and receival. So whenever the Arduino transmits any data, the TX LED will blink, and whenever the Arduino receives any data from any external device, then the RX LED will blink, which is an indication that you can check whether your transmission is happening correctly or not, whether the data is getting transmitted or not. The nature of their blinking tells you different things, whether it is getting transmitted, not getting transmitted, or even the rate at which it is getting transmitted. For that, there are different blinking patterns. So you can, from the blinking, you can get to know whether the data is getting transmitted or not, or you are receiving your data or not. And then there is then LLED. So this is the user defined LED. I mean, it is connected to the digital pin 13. So connected means it's internally soldered, of course, and you can use it for anything. I mean, you don't need, if you don't want to connect an external LED, you just want an LED that when it is 6 p.m. your LED should blink 5 times. So at 6 p.m. you can just produce digital output high at digital pin 13 5 times, and then this LED will glow because it is internally soldered to digital pin 13. So it is basically provided for you for any of your applications depending upon your project or your program. Okay, let's read about some more parts which are important. The first important part is the voltage regulator. See, I think I told you that you can take out the Atmega 328 chip and you can use it on a breadboard, but you need to be very careful that you are supplying it almost exactly 5 volt. Otherwise, boom, it will blow up. So the sensitivity of not just the microcontroller chip but also some other components, some capacitors, is they are very sensitive to voltages, because we are talking about electronics here. So everything is under 5 volts. So the voltage supplied, especially to that Atmega 328 chip, has to be 5 volts. Now this cannot be ideally possible every time. Even if you are connecting a 9 volt battery or a 12 volt laptop charger, and even if you are connecting a battery, it's not always 9 volt. When it's new, it might be 9.1 volt. When it's old, it might get to 8.7 volt. So, and there has to be some mechanism, someone who regulates the input which is coming. Even if it fluctuates, the voltage supply to the chip should be kept at 5 volts. That is done by the voltage regulator. It is a very crucial part. It keeps your circuit board safe. And even if you give 10 volt, 9 volt, 12 volt, the voltage regulator gives 5 volt. It takes in these 9 volt, 10 volt, 12 volt and stabilizes it to 5 volt. It's just like your stabilizer which you had in old refrigerators, if you would have seen it. It does the same job. To keep a stable output of 5 volt, we use a voltage regulator. Then there's a crystal oscillator. Okay, crystal oscillator. If you remember, I told you that we have a crystal oscillator, or maybe any kind of oscillator in the microcontrollers, which are the basis of the system clock. Okay, so through the oscillations of this oscillator, the clock is able to time the different events. And the crystal oscillator that is present in Arduino Uno, I've already told that it has a frequency of 16 megahertz. Okay, and yeah, that's very much basic. If I'm not wrong, it's a quartz crystal oscillator. You already saw pin V in. Yeah, yeah. You remember I told you that you can also use it to power the board from an external power source. Okay, for example, if your barrel jack is not working or you don't have a barrel jack at all, then you can use a jumper wire and you can supply power to your Arduino board using the V-in pin. Okay, but also you have to supply the ground also. Then this ARF pin, I think we already discussed it. You can change. ARF stands for analog reference. So you can basically change the reference which the AD converter uses, and depending upon that, you can not only control the sensitivity, but you can also, but of course, you can control the sensitivity, but you have to also change your program accordingly. Slight change, just a mathematical thing. I've already given an example how you can make the ARF 1 volt and then the program will become more sensitive. We have some time left, so we'll just scroll through some different types of Arduino. We have discussed about the Arduino Uno extensively because that is the one most of you will be using throughout. Okay, there's hardly means there will be very rare instances when you need more than that. Yeah, this is the Arduino Uno. The color can vary depending upon company to company. Okay, Arduino Mega. This as you can see, there are more pins on the Arduino Mega, and especially in the Arduino, sometimes you feel that you want more 5 volt output, or we want one more ground pin. So that, especially if you don't want to use a breadboard, of course there are miniature breadboards there, so you can use them. So Arduino Mega has more functionality. The chips are more, I think 62 or something. I don't remember the exact number. This is also another type of Arduino. Arduino Nano is also something that you might be using sometime. It's very small. It's almost the size of a pen drive. Okay, it's almost. I don't know whether you can gauge it from the picture or not, but it's like a pen drive. It's almost the size of a pen drive, and there are the 6 setup pins for programming, and you have to solder the pins. Sometimes they don't come as soldered, and then you can use it. It is mostly used. It has its processing power and functionality is less. The pins are also less, but sometimes you don't need that much functionality. Okay, especially when you're making some small projects. So there you can use Arduino Nano instead of Uno, and the power requirement will also be less. Then this is Arduino MKR0. Arduino Yun is also sometimes used. LilyPad Arduino, yes. LilyPad Arduino is basically like it's basically a wearable tech. If you're making a project where you need to make something which is wearable. For example, you're designing an LED pattern on a t-shirt where you want your name to glow up. So there you want a microcontroller which is very thin. So this LilyPad that you're seeing here, it's almost like you can imagine it that like a coin, bigger than a coin, double size, but the thickness is even less than a coin. Okay, you can see from the picture also they are not even pin headers. So you basically have to you have to solder your jumper wires, or you have to fix them properly. They are just holes, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 or 12, that's it. And but they are very thin, so the benefit is you can use them in making wearable tech. For example, if you are making a smartwatch, it's with simple functionality like counting steps or anything. So there, for the smartwatch, you can't use an Arduino Uno. It will become very thick and large. So LilyPad Arduinos come very handy in that kind of projects. Of course, the input and output pins are less, as you can see, but the functionality is right. There are some other microcontroller boards which can be programmed Arduino IDE environment. The firmware they also support the same firmware, so you don't need a different software to program them. Like ESP32, many a times people also call it a Wi-Fi module, but it's not exactly a module. It's a separate, on it has an onboard chip microcontroller along with Wi-Fi and Bluetooth modules. So it is a separate entity in itself. You can use it separately also, and many times we use it in connection with Uno, but it's not necessary. So if you are using some project, making some project where you need to send the data on the cloud or store it somewhere and remote access or something like that, so you need to connect your device to Wi-Fi internet, and for that you need ESP32 or ESP8266, any model of that. Node MCU, it also comes with an open firmware, so this can also be programmed using the Arduino IDE and wired board. Okay, so these are the different variations. We'll call it a day.